Hey guys, Cassandra here with Opera Appreciation for Black folks. On this channel, I work to undo cultural misconceptions about opera and teach you how to appreciate more opera in your daily life. On today's video, I'm going to break down 3 reasons why opera is so pretentious. Or is it? So you're in a relationship with yourself or you're in a relationship with a partner and you want to go out and feel special and amazing and cultured and dramatic and amazing. And you're like, ooh, what can I go do? Ooh, I could go to the opera, but I don't know about the opera. I don't want to get all dressed up. I don't want to be around the glitterati. And I don't even understand what's happening anyway. Like, it's just not for me. It's not my style. If you connect with that, well, then I'm going to give you 3 reasons why opera is pretentious, or is it? So, reason number 1, it's really pretentious and it's only for rich people and elitist people. And honestly, there is some truth to that, I have to say. And unfortunately, if this was a ticker, I think pretentious would totally get a ticker here, like, boop. Definitely pretentious. And why is that? Because when you really think about it, the birthplace of opera happened because a king decided, I want to have an amazing story played out for me on stage and I'm going to pay everybody to do it. I'm going to train people. I'm going to make sure that they do it to the utmost ability. And then I'm going to have an amazing party, invite all my closest friends, and we're going to get together and we're going to eat, drink, and watch this amazing show that I produced essentially and like have a great time. Because that was entertainment, and that entertainment was meant to be shared and became a part of the cultural norms, because otherwise it was probably really boring. There was no phones, no television, no anything to distract you. You just had you and yourself and I and the world and living and surviving. And so if you were a lord and you had all this extra money because, I don't know, taxes and all this stuff, you're like, you know what, I'm gonna treat my lords and ladies to a really amazing time and let them know how much I'm an amazing benevolent lord or count or whatever, and just have a party and get a reason for people to gather and socialize. And that's also the place where people were connecting and meeting future husbands and wives and stuff. So it's all about people coming together and wanting to be entertained in that time. But at the core of all that is the storytelling that really helps to transcend opera, because yes, it was birthed in a place where you had to have money to be able to appreciate this or even have access to it. It wasn't like there was somebody who was a peasant working in a field being like, excuse me, I'm going to stop and experience some opera here for a moment while I contemplate my life and my existence. No, that wasn't happening. But places where there was money and education and access to resources, it was happening. So sure, that's the birthplace, but at the core of it are these stories that were based in sacred stories, or they were based in Greek stories, or they were based in all of these stories that are about the humanities and the human experience, and being able to see yourself reflected in something that you would watch, which is what human beings use to help inspire each other and express our creativity. So it made sense that there was a desire for an outward expression. It's not like there wasn't books happening, or books being written or information not being shared, but it was just happening at a very slow pace or in small pockets where it was possible. And then once the funding or whatever disappeared, then that's where all those opportunities and resources went with it. It usually disappeared as well. So at the core, no, opera is not itself pretentious, because it is about sharing these stories that are based in history, that are based in inspiration from authors and poets and such, that are sharing humanistic stories and seeing that reflected on stage with, accompaniment by multiple people and actually acting it out, was the very beginnings of theater and drama merged together with music and sharing that. But the fact that that was only accessible if you were a person who had money, then yes, you were elitist essentially, because you're getting access to something that not everybody else did. So in that regard, potentiality for being very pretentious, yes. So reason number 2. Oh, it's in a different language, I'm not gonna get it. And yes, these operas are happening in different languages. Operas happen in English and Italian and French and German and Russian and Czech and Chinese, like just they're stories. They are stories from the human experience that people are expressing outwardly, because operas and theater was the equivalent of what we see as movies and television and shows today, except that people were up and out doing it in real time. And it's not that we've stopped doing that, it's just that the way that we share our ability to connect is now all on these digital platforms. So the core of it though, is that it's people sharing their stories, whether it's through like the beginnings of pop in the 18th century, where there was a troubadour or the person who had like an instrument and it was accompanying themselves and singing. That's essentially the beginnings of like pop music. When you're thinking about it, it's a person who's willing to accompany themselves and express themselves freely based on their cultural experiences. We see that in country music, we see that in pop music, but prior to that, in theater and drama, all of these stories were really kind of concentrated on historical stories, biblical stories, and putting those biblical stories or commonplace stories to music. And so if it's happening in a different language, it doesn't mean that you don't understand it. It just means that it's going to take a little bit of education to be able to understand and receive one another. And we do this with movies. Like if you're wanting to get into Marvel and you want to be a Marvel fan, or you want to be a DC fan, or you want to be a Star Wars fan, like there's so much context that you can get into. There are whole YouTube channels dedicated just to looking for the little Easter eggs within the context of the movie, just to help you appreciate it even more. There's, even if you're a Trekkie, there's whole books dedicated to breaking down the language that goes along with the dang show that was just like this wonderful inception from Gene Roddenberry, from like, you know, from God to his fingertips and out. And it's created this whole world that if you really wanted to delve into something and really understand the stories and understand the context, you can go as deep or as superficial as you like. But if it's about getting into opera and the education around that, the best way is to just do a little bit of research. Wikipedia is your friend, Google is your friend. You type in the thing you want to see, you go, oh, I want to see a comedic opera, or I want to see a dramatic opera and a love story, or oh, I want to see something really serious and intense, or oh, I want to sit back and watch a great Norse mythology unfold before me, unless you got hours and hours of time to sit down and listen to Wagner, because I personally am not into it, but I will sit down and watch Lord of the Rings. I don't know. It's the same concept. And so it's about what you're willing to get into. And now sometimes it gets pretentious because people who have education sometimes like to wield that against other people to make themselves feel better about themselves by showing what they have over other people. And unfortunately, that does run rampant in the arts, because arts is subjective, and it seems to really have a wonderful way of percolating in opera and classical music, because it still has its roots, as in the previous example, in it being an elitist thing that's only accessible to people who have money and culture, or access to culture. But thanks to the 1800s, that really changed, because we had more of a mixing and a melting pot of people coming into cities and people from the outside of those cities coming in and being influenced by what composers were pulling together and making great and amazing. And people were actually, you know, going out to seek out connection in music in a way that we don't as much today. We all know that going to see music live is an amazing experience, so much more amazing than listening to it on our phones through a headset. But we are still content at this time and day and age with receiving something through a screen. And so that makes things a little bit different. And it makes opera, unfortunately, which is really something that should be experienced in person, it kind of gets lost sometimes in the noise of like, well, am I gonna like this? Which brings us to reason number 3. It's boring, it's not your style, you think you're not gonna like it. And this is what I have to say to that. I spent 6 years busking in New York City subway systems with the Opera Collective, and I really loved my time nurturing my inner artist and sharing my craft to strangers of New York City for a number of years. And during that time, if I had a penny and $5, if I had a dollar for every single time somebody came up to me and said, oh my gosh, I don't like opera, but I love what you do, I always wanted to be like, but I am an essence of opera. So if you love what I do, in turn, you also love opera. You just haven't experienced it or felt like you saw somebody that reflected you, that you could connect with, that shared something that you also share. And so it's very interesting, because during my time in the Opera Collective, I would see one of my colleagues get up and sing the very same, we both know the same song, we both sing the same aria. She would get up and sing it and slay the house down, boots, yes God, the way that she would do it. And then I would get up and do it the way that I would do it. And we would both have very different experiences of feedback from the people we were singing to, based on how we felt and based on what we were giving and based on how people perceived us. And I always thought it was interesting that when a bunch of Black folks would walk by and see my colleague singing the same aria that I also know, that they would be a little bit disconnected from it and be like, it's just some and just keep going, you know? But I cannot help but deny the countless times that I would be getting up and singing and I would see Black folks walking by and they're like in disbelief, like, what how is this possible? Like their brain could not compute that they were seeing opera coming out of a Black person. That they're like, oh, but I feel connected to this person, and they would react differently. And I think that to me, that felt really impactful and inspiring as a performer, because I was getting an immediate response to what it is to get up and perform, and how my performance and how I'm feeling or what I'm delivering or how I'm communicating impacts the world around me based on how they were responding. My favorite was this one woman where she was just angry. She was angry. She needed to get to her train and she wanted to go, but I was singing so beautifully she just couldn't go. And she was just like, damn it, I'm gonna miss my train, but it's gonna be worth it. It's gonna be worth it. You know, like those moments where you just experience someone's pride and excitement when they connect with another person who is doing something that feels almost unimaginable, because it's never been a part of your daily life to think that this extraordinary sensation could come from Black people. And yet it's happening and it's real and it's like so amazing. It's like, to me, it feels like I'm going to Wakanda. Like, yes, Wakanda forever. And you feel connected to people that are doing amazing things like you. And opera has that ability to make you feel heroic, and it helps you focus on what you're great at and to deliver that. And then other people, I think, feel that same heroicism, and you just walk a little taller and you feel a little lighter and you feel a little expanded, and you're like got like a vibrational wash, and it just feels great. But you won't know that until you go and experience that. And that's the real thing. When people tell me opera is not for them, I'm like, until you really have experienced it, because maybe you just got all of these misconceptions about it and you've never really seen it for real or felt it for real or connected with it in a way that really spoke to your reality as a person in this country, in America, and what you go through. You know, it's just, we need to see more examples of ourselves doing incredible things. And I think being an opera singer is incredible. And I think Black people are incredible when they do incredible things. It inspires us to also be that incredible in our lives in our own unique and authentic ways. And so I think listening to opera inspires that. And I would love for you to feel that sensation too. So before you knock opera and say, oh, it's pretentious, maybe it really isn't. And maybe you'll open yourself up a little bit more to think about how you can enjoy this little sensation of heroicism a little bit more in your daily life. Question of the day, question of the day, question of the day. Yes. All right, so my question for you is, why do you think opera is pretentious? Like, what are the things that come to mind that make you think, oh, it's so pretentious? And is that actually true? And if you do think it's opera is pretentious because you've experienced it, please share your experience too. I want to hear all your comments below. I would love to start some new conversations and see what's actually going on and out there in the operatic world and what y'all think. And if you're a young artist out there, I would love to hear your experience of what you guys are working through and how we can serve and help each other. So please feel free to leave a comment below if you're a young artist and you're like, yeah, I'm feeling this and I have a question about this and that, and how did you overcome this and how did you do that, and blah, 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 blah. I'd love to have those conversations too. All right, guys, that's my share for today. Thanks for watching. Please remember to like, subscribe, and leave a little comment below. We love the comments. And this is Opera Appreciation for Black folks, making opera equitable. Thanks, guys. Ciao, ciao. Bye. I went to this girl talk about that you can't bounce to opera, and I was like, she definitely has not heard Figaro's aria. I'm like, I totally bounce to that. Or anything by Mozart. Like, hello.